This month is Women's History Month. And in celebrating this, I thought I'd do something a little bit different from having guests and interviewing them. On today's episode, I'd like to share some of my thoughts with our listeners and just dig a bit deeper into the current state of women in Africa. I've been doing a lot of research, a lot of thinking, and honestly, as I'm speaking, I have notes lying all over my desk in front of me. So I want to start off by reading out some statistics that I pulled from the World Bank Gender Data Portal. First, women make up 50.2% of the entire population of sub-Saharan Africa, and they hold approximately 27% of seats in national parliaments across sub-Saharan Africa. This figure is similar to the current world average of 26.7%. Now, compared to North Africa and Middle East, where 16.8% of the seats in national parliament are held by women. Second, women's labour force participation is actually higher in sub-Saharan Africa than in North Africa, with 65% of women participating in the labour force in sub-Saharan Africa as compared to 18.1% in North Africa and Middle East. Third, in sub-Saharan Africa, the female share of employment in senior and middle management ranges from 9.5% in Mali to 74.2% in Sao Tome and Principe. Now, only 5 countries, including Sao Tome and Principe, have the female share at approximately 50% or higher. Those other 4 countries are actually in sub-Saharan Africa, and they are Nigeria, Botswana, Seychelles, and Kenya. 4. In all economies in sub-Saharan Africa and North Africa, for which there are data, women spend more time than men in unpaid domestic and care work. And finally, there is a lack of reliable data on the prevalence of domestic violence against women in sub-Saharan Africa and North Africa. But I believe that we all hear the different horrific stories that manage to make it to the news. So I believe there is a lot to dissect here. Now, for those who listened closely to the statistics that I just read out, it's obvious that it's not all doom and gloom for the women in Africa, but it's also pretty clear that there's a lot of work to be done. So I also want to be clear, like very clear, that the purpose of this episode of the podcast is not to point fingers at anyone, nor cast blame on anyone in particular. The aim of this episode is really to encourage us all to think deeply, to challenge ourselves to do better, to be better for the growth and progress of a continent we hold so dear to our hearts. You know, the issues of gender disparities and just the lack of gender equality, equity, are not isolated to Africa. I mean, they are indeed global issues. However, I ask myself this question a lot. Must African countries wait for the rest of the world to advance in an area morally, or just advance in any area before they choose to also advance? Like, why can't we be the ones leading the charge in the quest for our growth and improvement and just development? Like, isn't it important for us to develop homegrown solutions to the issues that we face in Africa? Obviously, each country is different from the other, but homegrown solutions built by each country for their own unique issues that they face. You see, in areas such as fintech and just general tech industry, I found that we Africans are truly spearheading innovation locally and on a global stage. But our innovation cannot be solely focused on fintech and the tech industry. There are so many other sectors that must grow for us to build the Africa that we want to see. For example, infrastructure, education, manufacturing, healthcare, power, the extraction, processing, and management of our mineral resources. Honestly, the list goes on. There are just so many areas begging for our attention. And if we think about it deeply, this means that we need to have all hands on deck. This means that women must be encouraged and facilitated to be fully involved in the growth of our countries, in the growth of these various industries. And they must be encouraged to thrive just as much as men are. So this got me thinking about the ecosystem. And when I say ecosystem, I mean the strategic societal setup. Basically, how our system is currently set up to work, what feeds into what, to have the society and its system function as they currently are. You see, the current reality of African women is not by mistake, it is by design. And if we actually want to be serious about improving our continent, we must also improve the state and the roles played by African women. And to do this, we must critically review the ecosystem and how we want to improve each and every part of the ecosystem. Now, as I repeat myself, I have purposely not mentioned anyone in particular. I've not mentioned any government. I've not mentioned any government bodies or any companies, because I believe all of this is truly systemic. And no one person, no one government, and no one body in particular is to blame for everything as it currently stands. However, I do believe that people make up these institutions, and people have the ability to change. Hence, institutions do have the ability to change. And this then feeds into ecosystems changing for the better. Look, I know I speak from a place of privilege, one that a lot of young African women unfortunately do not have. I had the opportunity to go to top schools in Nigeria, top private schools in Nigeria, before moving to the UK for my undergraduate studies, working for a few years, and then attending INSEAD for my MBA. And, INSEAD is a school that consistently ranks amongst the best top business schools in the world. My mom is university educated, and she got to the top of her chosen career and continues to thrive in her retirement. And I've been blessed to have a mom that has always been my biggest advocate for my success in life and has just truly been an amazing role model, 10 over 10, from birth. But I know that this is not the case for many women in my country, in my home country, and on the continent as a whole. So the thing is that even with the privileges that I have, I know the hurdles that I have faced as a result of our current systems and the overall ecosystem. So acknowledging my privilege and knowing that it's a thing that I have also come across the pains that as a woman you face based on the systems and the ecosystems, I honestly think that we need to start thinking deeply and asking questions and taking actions, pushing and thriving and trying hard, just pushing and never giving up, never stopping. I hope to ignite a fire in at least 10% of our listeners. If you're part of this 10% that is uncomfortable and, moved enough to take action, I hope you feel free to work with other people, whether or not you completely agree with these other people on all topics. Throughout history, agents of positive change have not necessarily agreed with one another on every single topic, but they understood the principle that what is ultimately good for majority of humanity is worth putting effort in and is worth working across the aisle to achieve. They did not work based solely on identity politics or theoretical ideology. It was all about pragmatism. And talking about pragmatism, I choose not to sit here and just list all the ways in which the system has failed women in Africa and continues to fail them. And in turn, by failing women, the system actually fails itself as a whole. These are well-known and established facts. And if you literally Google any based on African women, you'd find out so much information. However, I do believe that most human beings are rational. And this is a question I want to pose to our listeners. Is it not rational to create an environment that maximizes your return on effort? Look, when I say return on effort, all resources being used, creating a society, an environment where all resources are maximized and you get a true great return on effort. Look, I might be wrong about this next point I'm about to make, but I do not believe that most people get moved to action by moral obligation. So I'm not coming here today to pose a moral argument. I do believe that most people get moved by what benefits them the most. So, you see, as a nation, if we truly want to do what benefits us the most, there's a saying that says, a nation can rise no higher than its women. Now, that saying actually is borrowed from a book focused on African American Muslim women who were part of the Nation of Islam in America. But I would like to actually use the literal meaning of nation here, that indeed there is no nation that can rise higher than its women. It's simply logical. If a nation chooses to only use 50% of its human resources and capabilities, no matter how efficiently it uses that 50%, even if it uses the efficiencies as 100%, that nation can never realize 51% of its actual growth potential talk more of even achieving greater than 51. Now, if a nation should utilize more, at least 80%, because I choose not to say 100%. As per human nature, we must leave room for error. But if a nation uses even more, in a humane manner of its resources, we are likely to actually see more return on our growth potential. I'm just coming from a rational point of view. It is rational to encourage women. It is rational to support women, to create an environment that is better for everyone involved, including men. It is important and it is rational. Now, everything being said, I'm not going to pretend that I have all the answers. I'm not a particularly great expert in macroeconomics, even though I did study economics in university, but I have not practiced that in my career for long. I am not going to sit here and pretend I have all the answers, because frankly speaking, I don't have the answers right now. But I really want us to focus our energies on practical, rational, sustainable solutions. Solutions that truly would create the reality that we can be encouraged by. A reality that produces the Africa that we want to be proud of. An Africa that we can be proud of to hand to the next generation. That is my dream. That is my hope. That we're able to hand the next generation an Africa that we can be proud of, that we can say we truly put in our best work. And we truly worked together. We worked across the aisle. We worked to make sure that the reality we have today is better than the reality we have tomorrow. I will stop my train of thoughts here. There's really so much I could go on talking about and delving into, but I want to keep this episode and my thoughts, I just want to keep it short and sweet, as hopefully you listen to it, and I hope to engage with our listeners. And I just hope that if there's one thing that our listeners take away from this episode, it would be the importance of thinking deeply and working together across the aisle for the common good. You see, the common good is for everyone, including you, the listener. And the common good in this particular case is the optimal participation of women in the progress, the growth, the building of our nations, our countries in Africa, and how this is truly a key component for progress. I mean, after all, if you spite women and leave them out, it's pretty much like you cutting your nose to spite your face. And now, would any rational person do that? Again, I say this, a nation cannot rise higher than its women. Thank you all for listening to this episode of the podcast. I would honestly love to hear your views on this topic of women's participation and the importance of their role in the progress of Africa, and just what ideas do you have on moving women forward, moving our countries forward in Africa, moving our continent forward. And I'd just really love to engage with everyone, our listeners. Please share your thoughts. And yes, until the next episode, for the good and the greatness of Africa. I am your host, Torera.